Thinking about the creative industries and enthusiasms in color releases, the creative industries. Got him? Thinking about the creative industries and the enthusiasm its color releases, wondering if a Beadle, a Burnside, and Junkanoo has had an impact on fatherhood? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear what prominent Bahamian artist Stan Burnside got to say about how the creative arts has cultivated our national psyche for good.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative 242.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. And we have this evening on the screen the vibrant, the most colorful, the man who shake a lake down the Bay Street Parade, Mr. Stan Burnside. Welcome. How are you? Oh, you sound muted. I'm muting. You're muting. Okay, let's take the mute off. Okay, you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Very much.
Yeah. I'm doing very well. And, I don't normally do these interviews, but I couldn't say no to the grandson of my godmother.
Oh boy.
Yeah, my beautiful godmother, Olga Dillard, who I love so much. She was so gorgeous. That's who Daniel gets her beauty from. Of course, her mother, Iris and Satella, I grew up admiring them and loving them. So it's a family affair. I couldn't say no to you.
I appreciate that. I didn't know I had all that clout.
Yeah, you got plenty clout, man. Yeah. People know I don't do these kinds of interviews.
Yeah, but we can make it through. I'm sure we can have a lot of fun as we go in the whole picture of things. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourselves. We're talking about Beadle, Burnside, and Fatherhood for Junkanoo. But tell us a little bit about yourself that might be pertinent to what we're going to be talking about today. Because we know your bio goes pages, almost 40 years of pages.
It just means I'm old,
I don't know about that.
But, you mentioned that name, Beadle, who I named JB when he was a student at the then College of the Bahamas years ago. And he was one of the students that I really became very close to. He and a number of others. I loved all of my students. Mm-hmm. He in particular was one who, as he grew in his profession, he became less a student and more of a colleague. And I think it's safe to say that he's universally respected as one of the giants in Bahamian art. He died young, at 62, is relatively young, but in his 62 years, he packed in a lot. So I thought of him as a son, and I've been able to have a ringside seat to see how he has developed as an artist. Initially Jackson and I were in the Junkanoo Shacks working together first for the Saxons, and then as members of one family. And in addition to that, when I formed the group, because even though he was very young at the time, we made him a member, a full-fledged member.
Right.
So I say all that to say that I could talk about Beadle for the whole hour. You know, he really is, he's worthy, and he is someone that I love and will always cherish his memory.
Mm-hmm.
And he and his wife and daughter will always be a part of my family, you know, and I miss him. In addition to JB, I had another student named James Pinder, who was from Bimini.
Okay.
He was very talented. He was in the teacher education program, but we had him painting and very talented, but he devoted his whole life to the students of Bimini. And in fact, his record of BGCSE passes was the highest in the country for a number of years. And he also passed.
Oh boy. Mm-hmm.
Young. So there's two blows that in, you know,
Right. Out of camp.
Yeah, but we remember them with great fondness. Yeah. But as far as I'm concerned, I've always been an artist, you know, even when I decided at one point in my life that I wanted to become a dentist, you know, and I went to college and started studying pre-med and, organic chemistry and physical chemistry and all kinds of other chemistries beat me upside my head. And I decided then and there, you know, I'm either going to be miserable or I can find something that I love, you know, and I've always loved art and it was always home to me, you know, when I had a pencil or a drawing or just playing with color and sculpting something. So going full-time into studying art and eventually becoming a professional artist has been
right, and a good one too. Yeah.
Well, it's been the best decision I've made for my life.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, you know, folks out there, we want you to ask as many questions as you have for this legend in front of me, because you know, you become a legend when you function in 3 spaces or more. You know,
Wow.
At an elite level, and you know, I see you doing that. You know, you're in the art space, you're in the mentorship space, so forth, and then you into this space like with the Because and the rest of those, where you help become a sort of a philanthropic of space of sorts. And so, you know, we want to dive into what it is, why people follow people like you, and people always say to me is because it's the fatherhood in people, why people do it, but we want to get your thoughts on it and so forth, and how some of these other machinery, whether it was Junkanoo or like you said that you had these pupils who you sort of followed through their journey in getting rolling in art and their creative spirits and so forth, and then how all of that made a major impact on our culture and the way people think in the Bahamas. And you have something that we're not going to let you sneak away, because I know you've been kind of quiet on this since you came out of the daily, but we can touch on it soon. And that's Sideburns. But we can start with saying, you know, that we want you folks out there to ask your questions, put them in the post in the chat, and join Dev Enterprises and Paget Investments as we have this interview today. And so, Senor, you know, I just call people all kind of names, so, you know, I know you're easy with me. But
Absolutely.
You being the vibrant one and expressive one in art and has a lasting impact on the Bahamas culture. Tell us then, how do you believe your work has influenced fatherhood and family dynamics?
Wow. Well, first of all, my own father was and is my hero.
Okay.
I was able to watch how he treated people.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Jackson, probably out of all of my siblings, is probably the closest to my father in personality. You know,
Okay.
we were just very larger than life personalities with very generous spirits. You know, my father, he grew up on the family islands. You know, he was born at I think he said he was conceived at Cat Island and born in Grumpy because his father was a traveling commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
He would go from island to island with his
Right.
father and the rest of the family. So he got to know all of the islands. And in fact, he was one of those of his generation who they could hear your last name and they could hear what island you came from. And he could tell you when your great-great-grandfather met his wife and
Right.
you know all the stories of the island, you know, so the whole griot thing is very much alive. And I think even today there are many people who are like that. I know Father Bishop rather Gilbert Thompson
Right.
is like that. You know, he has the whole history orally that he could tell you about the different family islands and especially the history of the Anglican Church. But I got to see my father and see how seriously he took the fatherhood responsibility. You know, he was one who I always say would take a bullet for his children.
Okay.
And because he was the way he was and the way he grew up as an island boy, he really extended that whole spirit of protection to all of the young people around him.
Right.
So that he had a love and a concern for young people generally. And so fatherhood is something that I grew up watching. And so in my life, I hope that I have been able to express that same sense of concern and protection and love for the young people who cross my path.
Right.
You know, fatherhood is that's a huge subject. You know, when you talk about fatherhood and art, you have to talk about artists like Kendall Hanna. You know, who man, that man is a giant. You know what I mean?
Genius. Yeah.
A genius, a first class a human being who has always been generous with his time and his talent. In this country, we're lucky to have an artist living at his age and still producing the way he's producing. I understand he's a little bit under the weather at the moment, and so we send big love and prayers to him. But we know that's just a bump in the road because he's the bounce back king.
Right. Right.
Then we have Max Taylor, you know, and another man. We're so fortunate in this country, and Brent Malone, and Rolf Harris, and Alton Lowe, and oh man, you know, if I, you know, Malcolm Ray, you know, so many. Horace Wright, Homer Williams. I mean, it goes on and on, you know. But I think that the whole tradition of fatherhood in art in this country is something that that we all embrace, and even the younger artists, John Beadle, Tonius Roberts, and even some of the younger ones have followed that same tradition of sharing and mentoring those who are younger than they are. And then, of course, when you go to Junkanoo, it's the same thing. You know, when you enter a Junkanoo shack as a young boy, it's like you under the tutelage of a whole tradition of, you know, mentors, you know, who will show you how to pace, show you how to build a costume, show you how to ring bells, beat drums. And it's something that we take for granted, but you know, I think it's something that we should study, because I think in that whole tradition of fatherhood, there is a potential to really have a powerful impact on especially our young men, who,
Right.
some of whom are at risk.
Right. You know, and I always say that, you know, particularly with Junkanoo and sports, that that's probably the two places where persons, particularly young men, a lot of young men in our country, get their first experience with being in a structured system of where you have authority and you have a direct relationship between how you produce and or how you behave and what your results are and where you finish, whether first, second, third, or what have you, because you know you're working as a team. You know, and we teach a lot of things in those spaces. And so we take our hats off to people like you who do these things. And so you mentioned John Beadle, and I have him in the title.
Before you go on, team is the key word, you know, because I think that you know, we're very fortunate in this country. You know, when we think about our motto, forward, upward, onward, together, you know, it's all about collaboration, it's all about sharing, and it's all about teamwork, you know. And you know, the National Festival of Junkanoo, you know, in order to create a Junkanoo presentation, you know, you have to come together as a team and work together, you know. So that teamwork. Oh, that's Chantal Bethel saying today is Kendall Hannah's birthday.
Right.
And also Dean Barker's birthday. So we wish them both a happy birthday. That's Dunglick Studios, my sister-in-law.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pam, she's another extraordinary person.
Yeah.
For the devil. Yeah. They move the rocks and make them go to the mountain.
Absolutely. You know, years ago, I'll tell you a story. Our youngest son had to spend, he was very young then, had to spend a weekend up at his Uncle Jackson and Aunt Pam.
Right.
You know, and when we came back, I think we had gone out of town, and we came back and he was doing something and we had to discipline him. And he told us, he said, man, I don't have to stay here. I could go back up the hill to Uncle Jackson and talk about the diaspora. You know, because his Uncle Jackson had this level of conversation and always talking, you know, and the level of conversation fascinated him. And this word diaspora, he couldn't wait to use that, you know.
Yeah. He dropped that on you. Yeah.
Drop that on us. Drop that on us. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dunglick here is saying again that Pam, they're saying this community is the bedrock for our country. It takes a village, very much so. And, you know, more and more you find that people are talking about those things in modern times. That this village issue seems to have disappeared and gone astray.
Yeah.
So
we can get it back.
Yeah, so we're starting to talk about Beadle, and we say I'm saying he's another one of the prominent ones. And you call him young, and I guess that's all relative, because I would look at my son Dominic those in that era
Yeah,
as young, because even John Cox those, my cousin, is a
absolutely.
tier higher
Yeah,
than them. And then you have the Beatles who in set with me, and then yourselves, and then you mentioned some of those who've been way before.
yeah.
Two we.
That's a
Yeah.
very good point, Happy.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mother was 97 years old when she passed,
Mm-hmm.
and she always considered me to be a baby. It used to drive me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
She still thought she had to protect. You know how the mothers are.
Yeah.
Still,
Today.
they still believe they have to protect you and guide
Mm-hmm.
you and advise you. So the thing is, JB was a full-grown man, but he was still a baby.
Mm-hmm.
to,
Okay.
to me, and that
Right.
never changed. And I wouldn't even talk about John Edward.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John Edward is even younger.
Yeah,
And
that's what they call John Cox. Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm. Most people.
yeah, yeah, but they are people who, as young as they are, they have mentored so many artists who are younger than they are. So you're absolutely right. That even though I call them young, they're giants.
Right. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So John B joined you. You mentioned as an artist in the artist group because. So how did your joint efforts contribute to Bahamian art and its collective connection to the fatherhood? How
Well,
did you all use that?
well, I think that initially when we came together, it was because all of us were sort of working in the same vein. We were all doing work that was non-traditional,
Okay.
not just the landscapes and traditional
Right.
portraits and all of that. We were all sort of using Junkanoo iconography, Junkanoo color and design, and experimenting with abstract design elements. And so we came together because we were using a common language in that sense. And in doing so, we produced some exhibitions that went to other countries. And to this day, I still think of that group of artists as a family, and there were 6 of us originally. There was myself, my brother Jackson, John Beadle, Antonius Roberts, Brent Malone, and Max Taylor.
Right.
And Happy, the only 3 of us left,
Yeah. Well.
Antonius, Max, and myself are the 3 survivors of that crew. And it makes you realize how precious time is and how fortunate we were that we were able to come together, because we were all doing our individual practices, and something brought us together. And nothing could be more Bahamian, again, than collaboration.
Uh-huh.
So we have what I think is a very important part of our psyche, the need to collaborate. And we talk about it takes a village, and we really practice that.
Right.
I need to say that John Beadle and a group of College of the Bahamas artists were even before, because they formed a group called Opus 5.
Okay.
And so they, they taught us how to do it. The babies taught us how to do it.
Yeah. But you say about it's only 3 of you left. But when you look at that 3 and that 5 and that 6 is multiplied multiple times, because John Cox, or John Edward as we know him, you all did the sort of out of the box type art compared to the Eddie Menaces and those who had that really fine tuned, natural looking. I mean, the pictures was not natural looking, but
realistic.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Huh? You're right. So, and then out of John, then you have Dominique, my son, and I remember you saying man, this boy is great, this and that and that and that. And I'm looking at these things that he's drawing and painting and stuff, and I'm like, what is this man looking at? I don't see what he's seeing, and blah, blah. I say it because
But you get
they
it.
gone totally abstract, and I say so now when I look at what they're doing, I'm like, whoa,
Mhm.
you know, these are some serious things, and just to build on that foundation that y'all put there, to go in their space and do what they want to do with the courage that you all had to step out.
Yeah,
And they step out even further. And almost now it looks like almost everybody doing a taste of something that
yeah,
is not normal or not traditional. That's the word I'm looking for,
yeah.
traditional.
Well, we have great examples of courage as far as art is concerned in this town. Even you mentioned a guy like Eddie Minnis, who he earned a degree in architecture and could have come home and practice as an architect and probably made a living. But
Right,
he decided he wanted to do art, and he had the courage to just make a way. I always, whenever I talk about Sideburns, I talk about how I benefited from Eddie Minnis cutting down all the bush. By the time Sideburns happened, Potluck had cleared the land and
right,
starting to build the road. Of course, I helped him to build the road.
right,
It took a lot of courage to be, the first one always has the roughest time, and
right,
like our parents and their parents had a rougher time than we had. But, he had courage. Brent Malone had courage. Max Taylor, all of these
right, right,
artists who managed to maintain their practice in very, very rough times. Nowadays we have galleries, very respected
right,
collectors and curators and people who encourage and support artists. But in those days, they were few and far between. So, look at a guy like Amos Ferguson.
yep,
Amos Ferguson was a guy who painted paintings that people laughed at,
yep,
and in spite of that, he had the courage to continue to produce work. And thank God he did, because his body of work is one of the greatest in the history of our country. And, we should be proud to know that we had an artist of that caliber and that stature in
right,
our community.
right. And so as you talk, and it just reminded me, that all of those persons drew the best out of the persons that came after. And that's why, I look at it and I say art and sports in particular. Actually, in culture as a whole, they have this, excuse me, this underlying thread of fatherhood that it builds. And so as we talk and touch over to the other action in the title is Junkanoo, and I call Junkanoo an action.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. People say it's a parade and stuff. I just think it's an action. It's a behavior. It's not just the parade. It's continuous, even when you're not on stage, because you're always on stage. That's the way it seemed to me. But how has this cultural phenomenon shaped the perspective of fatherhood in our community?
Wow. I can think of so many examples. The leaders of Junkanoo groups, they become father figures for a lot of the members of their group.
Okay.
I can think of one thing that happened when we formed One Family Junkanoo and Community Organization. I remember there was a gang on Hay Street in the area of One Family And Rory Saunders, who was a CID officer at the time, knew these so-called bad boys. They weren't bad boys. They just had a lot of time on their hands and they would get into mischief. So he went into that community and he grabbed all of those guys who were getting into mischief and he put drums in their hands. And man, you know, when you think about it, you talk about fatherhood. I mean, that's such a powerful thing. And he didn't just put drums in their hands, but he put his arms around them,
right,
and let them know that they had some backup. And
value.
you know, he also made them accountable. You know, and the leader of one family today, Vernon Rowe, fine, one of the finest young men that I know. Here we go, young again. He's a full-grown man, but he's a baby to me. He was one of those men that Roy Saunders pulled out, you know, and there's so many stories of how Junkanoo has really embraced young people and mentored them, and in some ways substitute for the lack of father, you know, a father image. But there are many stories like that, you know. So Fatherhood and Junkanoo, of course, the father of modern day Junkanoo was Gus Cooper. And, you know, the king of Junkanoo, you know, Bola Francis. You got to give him credit for all of the young people that he has mentored and continues to mentor, and so many others in Junkanoo. You know, when you start calling names and you don't, you know, Quentin Barabbas, Woodside, you know, many of the top Junkanoos came through him, and Paul Knowles, Peter Turnquist, Bane Boy, Sammy Archer, Tones. You know, once I start naming, of course,
then people can call you up and ask you why you ain't call their name.
The leader of my Junkanoo shack, Bernard Gay Davis. You know, got to name him as well. You know, but I contributed a lot to Junkanoo. You know. I spent many hours in the Junkanoo shack. When one family started, I used to draw out every last costume that one family put on Bay Street. You know? And that took many hours, you know. And sometimes I would be going around the clock in the studio drawing. And you know, many Junkanoo artists have given that same level of commitment and you know.
So that tells me there has to be a passion driven from within, like the priest getting called to become a priest, person being called a priest. How was that for you? What was that driving force? What inspired you and Jackson and the rest to be in the shacks the way you all were?
Well, Jackson was on a different level than me, you know. Like Junkanoo for me, I drew so much inspiration from Junkanoo. After each Junkanoo season, I would take that high level of energy back into my painting studio and really be charged up, you know. But you know, it came to the point where I became less and less willing to give that level of time, you know, into Junkanoo. And I started to put some of that into my painting studio, my painting practice. And then I stopped dancing on Bay Street. And Jackson, if he were alive today, he would still be dancing on Bay Street, you know? And so you see, a guy like Jackson, a guy like Gus Cooper, a guy like Percival Francis. I mean, those guys are just, they're on a different level, and I respect that, but the thing about Junkanoo is that so many fine artists have drawn from the experiments, the innovations, and the achievements of Junkanoo artists, who developed their own system of color and design. Okay. And you have artists like Brent Malone and Max Taylor and myself and Jackson and Antonius Roberts, John Beadle, John Cox. All of us have drawn from that system of design developed by Bahamians, And the amazing thing about Junkanoo, and I guess I'm sort of drifting from area to area in Junkanoo. The amazing thing about Junkanoo is that when Jackson, John Beadle, and I were in the Junkanoo Shacks, we decided we would take that process of collaboration, because in the Junkanoo Shacks, you have more than one person working on a costume at the same time. There's collaboration. Right. We decided to take that process into the painting studio. And so when we took that process into the painting studio, we developed a series of paintings called Jammin'.
Okay.
Initially, there was Jackson, John Beadle, and myself. And then eventually we had Brent Malone and Antonius Roberts join us. So there were 5 of us painting on the canvas at the same time. So then a couple years after that, I read a paper at the Caribbean Biennale in Santo Domingo on that whole collaborative process called Jammin'. And I remember Dr. David Boxer, who was the chief curator at the Jamaica National Gallery of Art. He came up to me and he said, "Man, you Bahamians are so fortunate." He said, "Because what you're doing in Jammin' forces the viewer to understand Bahamian art." He said, "Most of the artists of the Caribbean are painting in the style of some Europeanism. Like Impressionism, Expressionism, Surrealism, or whatever. But in order to understand what you're doing with your Jammin' paintings, you have to understand Bahamian art that was developed by Bahamians, and that puts you in a different category, than the other Caribbean artists." So I just thought I would share that with you.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so Mr. Cooper here is saying that can you recommend any books that discusses the history of Junkanoo?
Yes, there are a few books that discuss the history of Junkanoo. There's Arlene Nash Ferguson's book, I Come to Get Me. That is a brilliant book that not only discusses the history, but is a pictorial essay of what happens in the Junkanoo Shack. And of course, there's a book that Nicolette Bethel wrote jointly with her father on the history of Junkanoo. There's a book that was written years ago by Anthony Morley on Junkanoo. I think Dean Barkey just produced a book on the colors, Junkanoo group. I think Angelique McKay produced a book on Junkanoo. I think I don't want to forget anybody. Manny Francis produced a book on the history of the Saxons. Who am I forgetting now? I know someone will tell me.
So while you think about that, something to think about. two books, but they're in video form. They're short books. Both of them, Chris, what do you call it, Omoshango Davis, was the guest on the show, and he took us to the connection of Cuba, the Bahamas, etc., and Africa. And then he also had one on Junkanoo Pacific. And so we went back to, in the first one, went back to Ghana and made the connection. And then the second one, he spoke more in detail. And he's supposed to be coming back to talk about a very prominent Bahamian in my upline on my mummy's side. And I'm just waiting for him to give me the time when he's actually coming for that. And that would be on Stephen Dillett. Now I know that was in Junkanoo, but that was out of the Haitian Revolution, where you know, he came from and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Chris,
I think there's a number
Chris
of other
is the
persons.
king, right? Wasn't he named the king?
Yeah, he's the name of king now after I don't want to pronounce the name wrong, but the actual king who actually Junkanoo came about from. And I think he was one of the kings that was never oppressed by the colonial European system. I know the Ethiopians weren't, and I think he was one also.
Yeah.
Based on so when Chris comes on, I remember to try have that thing.
I know Angelique.
Black Rice. That's the name of the book, right?
Yeah.
Black Rice, right?
Yeah.
Black Rice, yeah.
Yeah, I know Angelique McKay has done some work with him as well. The leader of the Junkanoo Commandos, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
So now,
historian.
Yeah. So my favorite, right, is Sideburns. The cartoon characters that used to come out. I mean, that was one of the few things that I read, if you could call it reading, because I believe it was reading, because you had to interpret certain things that was in the pictures. My mom always said I never used to read books and this and that, but I sure was going to get the paper to get that when we go into school and so forth and the like. And so when we look at that and analyze the social and cultural stimuli associated with it, did it ever touch upon fatherhood themes? And if so, how? I know we always talk about, I don't know if it's the shack rat was considered offensive or what the people today, but I looked at their looking up to everybody else as a part of or looking like how a son would look to a father in your characters. How would you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, you know, the whole theme of fatherhood runs through everything, you know, in this country. You know, the majority of cartoons that I did were done about the father of the nation, you know.
Right.
I mean, he always tell one of his children that, you know, your father helped me to educate my kids, you know, because he gave me so much material as a cartoonist, you know, that those were the heydays of my cartoon. But as far as the theme of fatherhood in the cartoons, I think I would have to describe it in an abstract way. That I tried very much to have a very, very high standard of principle, you know, very high principles, and I tried to be as fair as I could and as even-handed as I could. Now, some people later on say I became very one-sided, and that might be true, you know, because sometimes you get caught up in individuals who inspire you to just do a whole campaign against them.
Right.
You know, But I always think that I did as many negative cartoons against both sides of the political spectrum, you know.
Right.
But sometimes when a certain party is in power and I do a lot of cartoons against them, certain people get upset.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they
that can always
forget,
happen. Right.
but they forget that when the other side is in, you know, their side gets upset too, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
For convenience.
but so, you know, the sense that the father has of trying to be fair and trying to set the right kind of example and trying to be accountable is the spirit I tried to maintain in doing the cartoon, because the cartoon is a powerful instrument,
Yep.
very powerful instrument. I've had MPs call me up and beg me to be gentle on them. You know? I mean, I could call some names. I won't.
Right.
One time, a fella came up to me, and it was so funny. I thought he was joking, but he was sweating and trembling, you know. And he said, "Man, you know, they're coming after me, man. But I want you to be nice to me, man. You know, you're my boy, man. You know, be easy on me, man. You know." And I didn't realize. I thought he was joking. That he was really afraid of being, you know, caricatured. You know,
Right.
because he felt like he was a little bit exposed. You know, so as a result of that, I had to, you know, I had to
Back
have,
off a little bit.
yeah, I had to have a certain level of restraint and understand. You know, there were a few cartoons that I did, however, that if I had to do them over again, I would take them back. They were a little bit over the line, and one in particular I know hurt not just the victim of the cartoon, but the family of the victim. And I really feel like I was wrong in doing that cartoon.
Yeah, but I mean, it tells us that you all are human, right? But I've always learned that art is supposed to push the limits, but like you say, you might have gone too far in the limit. So
Yeah.
that's a balancing act that you have to do, so forth, as we go. And so Beadle was also distinct in his artistic talents, and you mentioned some of that already. And so tell us then, how does his work reflect or challenge traditional notions of fatherhood in the Bahamas? Because I guess you could describe it different than me, but his work really, to me, popped out off the page, off the canvas. Like it was almost you were in a real virtual movie when you looked at his work. To me, that's the way I saw it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was an extraordinary artist. Speaking of fatherhood, I've seen a lot of photographs of him. He was a very photogenic fellow, by the way. My favorite photograph of him was him asleep on a couch with his daughter, Janique. You've seen that photograph too, eh?
No, but I seen one similar. Yeah.
Janique asleep on his chest, you know, and you could just see, man, that he was in heaven, you know. You know, man, this fellow was a serious father. He was a serious father, you know. In the past year, he and I had a lot of conversations about family and, you know, and he was so proud of his daughter. He just kept talking about her over and over again. And of course, about how much he loved his wife. He was he was not only just a one family, he was a family man, you know. But getting back to his talent, JB had an extraordinary ability to create an image on a two-dimensional surface. You know, he could he could make a mark that really meant something, you know.
Right.
Extraordinary man. In fact, I tell the story, and it's a true story, that when we were meeting as B-Cause artists, there was Brent Malone, Max Taylor, Antonius Roberts, of course, me and Jackson, and JB. Brent Malone got up in the middle of that meeting and said, out of all of us, JB is the most talented, the most naturally gifted artist, And of course, all of us were sucking our teeth at him, but we recognize
that was senior man talking.
We recognize the greatness of John Beadle, and so he had this extraordinary talent, and he was one of those artists who understood the sciences, So he was like Leonardo da Vinci of the Bahamas, Da Vinci, who was just as good in his fine art as he was in the sciences, as an architect and as someone who studied anatomy and all of that. And JB was all of that, man. JB did some extraordinary things. I could tell you some things that he did that were just, they're the stories that you talk about generations to come. When we went to the south of France, it was John Beadle, John Cox, and myself. We were exhibiting at a museum in the south of France, and none of us could speak French, right? And when we were sitting in the restaurant, none of us knew how to order and all the rest of it, And I said, man, what are we going to do? JB said, man, I can figure something out. So the next day, I saw JB, and he was talking French, with the fella in the road. When he went to the restaurant, he was talking French to the lady. And I said, JB, I thought you didn't speak French, He said, yeah, man, I just memorized a couple words and put some things together. Say, it really ain't that hard, And so,
but a smile with it in that way, yeah.
This was a guy with a brilliant mind. When he was a student at College of the Bahamas, he was teaching the students in his math class. He was tutoring them. So, he was an extraordinary talent, and I think that in this country, as small as we are, to have that kind of talent, we have to recognize it, One of the last exhibitions that JB did was a jamming exhibition that he and I did with Antonius. And we had the chance to work in the shack, and it's a lasting memory of his energy, man. This guy, he would go home. I found out from Shelley that he would go home from the studio where Antonius and I joined him and were producing these jamming paintings, and he would be producing work at home, and then he would come in. And sometimes he would come in almost dragging his slippers, man. You could see he was beat.
Right.
As soon as he got into the studio and started working, man, just
the energy
came back, And so, working with him was always a joy. Working with him in the Junkanoo shacks, Jackson and I working together, man, that was a gift, as an artist, to be able to collaborate with that level of talent,
Right.
Yeah. And the thing about JB, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You finish that off. Yeah.
The thing about JB as a human being was that JB, and I said at his funeral, that JB collected people, you know, like when JB met you, right? And he liked you, for the rest of his life, he would communicate with you in a way that you would feel like he really knew you and he cared about you, you know?
Right.
So that when I met him, there were friends from his childhood who I got to meet. And the last year of his life, he was mentioning their names, you know? So, and everybody feels like he really, really knew them, you know? And
yeah, and he did give you that feeling now that
he was an extraordinary individual, man.
that you've been around forever, and you were his good friend, and all of that. You didn't. At least I'd never. Even when I first met him, I was like, and this gentleman just came up to me and started talking and made you feel right at home. Like I was lost in the art space, but you know he sort of helped to guide you and touch you, but didn't push you and all that kind of stuff. Just trying to understand the different person's work, because going to the art gallery, and folks, you have to go and pay attention to the Bahamian artists, because the variety is so deep right now. I mean, I know you always talk about variety being wide, but we're talking about deep also, right? So you're going wide and deep. But whatever we do in the Bahamas, we just be the best. I don't care what you all say. So, but you started out from JHS, and you got your bachelor's in fine arts and master's in fine arts, and then you went on doing your teaching, as you mentioned, and so forth. At College Bahamas, and mentored some of these children and a lot, so forth. All of that is a part of the fatherhood picture. But how did your role in education intersect with what we're talking about here? How did that propel your whole perspective on how you express yourself through your art?
I learned a lot from my students. In fact, I probably learned more from them than they did from me. You know,
most teachers would tell you.
The truth be told. And my teaching method was that when I saw that a student had talent, then I went to work to nurture that talent by encouragement and reinforcement and support. And because that's what encouraged me to continue to be an artist. I could remember an English teacher, a little lady, Mickey St. George, you know. She was shorter than my grandfather. My grandfather was 5 foot tall, you know, but he could cut you down to size in a second. But Mickey St. George, man, this little English lady used to have me in the drawing class, and I would be sitting next to Neil Wright, whose father was Horace Wright. And so Neil knew a few things more than we did because of his father. But Mickey St. George would always single me out and put me on a pedestal in that class. Oh, look at Stan's work, you know, look at Stanley's work. When you have it, you have it, man. When you have it, you have it, you know. And man, that just gave me so much encouragement, you know. Then James Smith, the former governor of the bank, former minister of finance, his mother one day saw some drawings that I did. And I told her she asked me what I was going to do as a career. And I told her I was going to follow my father and become a dentist. She said, "But you look at this talent. What's going to happen to this talent?" You know? And she also lit a fire in me that she probably didn't even realize she did, but she was a teacher and she knew how to encourage and inspire people. And she's one of the people who really, really made a difference in my life.
Right.
And so many others, along the way, encouraged me to just be who I was. And who I was is an artist,
Who I was is who I is.
Who I is, man. Who you is, And luckily, I found my way in time to really enjoy my life, because it's been a joy. In recent years, I use my children as subjects. My work is still beyond just straight realism, but I use my beautiful kids as subjects in my paintings. So in a certain sense, my paintings are all about fatherhood,
Yeah. But speaking of them, we need to walk through some of these, right? And
yeah, this is a painting that I did of our youngest son, Nejmi, and our daughter, Brooke. And these paintings were done during the during the pandemic.
Right.
And it's called Sibling Sanctuary. Okay. It's all about, being shut down and having your close family around you to support you.
Yeah.
And the times called for a lot of purples and sort of dark colors,
Right, yeah. And Nejmi look, he have that look on his face.
Yeah. Now, this is my oldest son, and this is a painting called, what is this called now? Oh, boy. I forget what it's called. But what it's about is the distance, the short distance between being locked up in jail and being locked up at home during the pandemic. And the references to the Birdman. Oh yeah, this painting is called Critical Race Reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we go to this one.
And this one is called Invictus. Invictus. And it's all about finding the strength to survive.
Cool. And I think you got one more.
Yeah. And this one was really inspired by a book by Dr. Innes called Baintown. And he talks about some people of Yoruba heritage who were living in Baintown and who refused to give up their Africanness. They walked around dressed like Africans, and they thought of themselves as Africans until the day they died.
Right.
And so this is about two old men who have had different experiences in the so-called new world.
Right.
One conforming and surviving, and the other one just fiercely holding on to his Africanness. This is called Ghost Stories.
Ghost Stories. Okay. Yeah. And the bird, I guess, is
well, my kids say the bird is, well, I'll leave you. The bird is eating red, black, and green seeds.
Oh, okay.
So
I gotcha. That's what I thought. But,
yeah. So you can make of that what you want. And this is a painting of our youngest son again, Nejmi, and it's called "You Are Not Alone."
All right.
And sometimes when we looked outside during the pandemic, the only contact we had with life was what we saw flying through the sky, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So we got a couple more comments came in here just now. Let me see if I could find them real quick. I think that one. Did I show that one? That's okay.
That's the great Norman Rowe, who was the leader of one family, the great giant. And I'd like to also salute Christine Fernanda, the former leader of one family. Send my love to her. And all of the leaders, Roy Saunders, Porky Dorset, of course, Darren Tenquist, Darren Bastian, of course, my brother posthumously, and the first chairman, Chippy, Hubert Chipman. So that particular group, when you talk about fatherhood, that particular group is that is a powerful tool of fatherhood in our community. A powerful tool, you know. And when you talk about the history of one family, I am so proud to have been a founding member of one family, and one family continues to do great work.
Yeah, and y'all got cheated the first time out.
Well,
y'all came out with so strong that I think y'all just blew the judges. They just got dismal.
Well, you know, I'll be very honest with you, Happy. He got slaughtered the first time we came out, but Bernard Gay Davis, who is whose yard one family was born in, his mother was the biggest one family fan, and we got beat so badly the first time we went out. But when we went back to our yard, all she could say is, "Boy, they too like cheat," you know.
Yeah, trust me, that everybody who was in the bleachers with me, in that area was saying the whole time, and then when it came out, we said, "No, this ain't right. This ain't right." But I know we've run out of time.
We got robbed further on. We got robbed, but that first time, our costume for the brass didn't come out until Bay Street, man.
Yeah,
you know?
But see, you're looking at it from a pure technical, and what do you know is supposed to happen. We're talking about what was presented, right?
Okay.
And yes, you mightn't have been perfect in what you wanted to present, but what you did present was so different and so much advanced in people in my set. We felt that y'all got robbed.
Yeah.
But I know you stretched for time and we passed the hour and everything, but I want to ask these couple of questions before we go, because this one here is you know, we tend to go through life and we don't want to talk about people's rewards and honors until they don't go in the grave. Then everybody wants to talk on the funeral for 2 hours and say what they wanted to say, but they didn't believe that they should have said whilst the people was alive, right? And so forth. So
I hope you're not making a crack on me. You know, they had to ring the bell on me in the church when I was talking about JB.
And that's all right. But you talk about him all the time, so it's not like people didn't expect that, right? People expected you to can have trouble. That
he knew how I felt about him. He knew
you know, and then that was probably just a part of you expressing that you didn't want to let go and all that kind of stuff. You know how we go. Man ain't supposed to be emotional, but you just get emotional anyway. So how has the your dedication to the art and culture influence your role as a father and a family man? I just want you to touch on that one, because I know we talked about it a lot, but I wanted to get to another question too. So you want to touch on that one first? Yeah.
How has that affected my role as a father? Well, I know that when I was involved heavily in Junkanoo, I would spend every day in long hours in Junkanoo, and my kids would only see me on their way to school, really, and I realized that, fortunately, I have a wife who was able to pick up the slack to create enough continuity in the home that even when I wasn't there, I was there,
Right.
So in some ways, because there were children in the Junkanoo shacks who I mentored, I was sharing my fatherhood responsibilities with them, as do most of the older Junkanoos in Junkanoo shacks, You get the opportunity to advise young people, and some of them had challenges that I was happy to be in a position to listen to them and to help them and to advise them.
Right.
While I was doing that, I was taking that time away from my kids, and so to a great extent, they had to make a sacrifice. Like most of the best Junkanoo artists, their families have sacrificed, man, and that's something that isn't really spoken about, but they do it out of love, and the result is for the greater good of the community, because they have a positive impact on the community through Junkanoo,
Yeah. Well, we didn't have time to touch on Marina Village or the NAGB as your chairmanship there, and a number of other things going forward, but maybe you will be kind enough to come back at some point in time. We could drill down into one specific area again and just have a good conversation, because I think there's a lot of content on the table that isn't being said that needs to be said, and to help people know, and particularly our young people, and see how they could get involved in these positive, constructive things to move forward versus getting caught up in stuff that might be exciting, but it really isn't going to lead them to anything significant as to what they want to do. So my final question to you before I ask you if you have any questions you want to ask would be is that both you and Beadle have left indelible marks, and you're still rolling on, and he's still rolling on even though he's not with us. His work is rolling on. Then what advice would you give to aspiring artists and fathers seeking to make a positive impact?
When I think about it, Happy, this has been a very, very deep subject that you've been advancing here, and to me, it's so powerful how you have challenged me, to recognize the awesome responsibility of fatherhood, and how as a father you have to be conscious in every area of your life,
right?
The kind of example that you're setting, and the kind of tone that you're setting for the next generation.
Right.
I forgot the question.
Yeah, right on the screen. What advice would you give to the aspiring artists?
I
their fathers.
I would advise aspiring artists to look around the community and to see which artists' works they're drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
When they're drawn to particular artists' works, try to make contact with that artist. I still feel that we have a tradition of helping younger artists in this community. That tradition goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very clear that even though it's easier to survive as an artist nowadays, art is still a difficult profession. It's still a difficult choice to make. And you have to really love it to make that choice, because, you're going to, you're going to have a rough time. But the rewards are greater if you really, really love it. Take the plunge and seek advice from artists. We mentioned Kendall Hanna again, and I just want to end sending him my love,
right,
and my respect, man. Much respect to the great Kendall Hanna, and I know that he's going to be fine and bouncing back. And Kendall, I'm going to call you tomorrow, and we have to get together again. And we love you. And like John Beadle and all of the other artists who have transitioned into eternity, as we say, they haven't gone anywhere, because they left their work with us, and we can still feel their love. So Happy, I want to thank you, man. Thank you.
You're quite welcome, and I'm thanking you because you one of those icons, those movie stars, as I call it, those people who have done so much, but like you said earlier, you just want to sit back and let everybody else shine, but you don't want to come to the forefront. I don't know if that's because Jackson was your brother, that he always can be on front stage, but sometimes them sibling things is do some things, but I said no, and then Mommy said to me, well, you've been trying to get Stan on the show, why don't you get him to talk about Beadle, right? And so I say, okay, I'll go talk to him, see what he can say.
It's my pleasure to talk about JB, Jackson, Brent, Amos Ferguson, all of the artists who went before. I consider myself so fortunate, to have had the experience of being in their presence.
Yeah. Well, these are awesome times and awesome people, and you all have that village in the art space. And I used to see it in sports. I don't know if we're doing it in sports anymore, but in the art space, I still see it. When I go to the art gallery or any of the galleries, you see the community of persons who support in day out, over and over. Nobody seems to be, at least they don't show it. If there is a riff, you're not going to see it just by circulating. The vibe, you don't feel that energy of a riff. Some places you go, you could feel the tension in the air and the this and the that.
Yeah. Well, naturally, people are different, and there will be differences. But I think in the art community, we have a tradition of reaching across towards each other when it's called for,
Right.
And I think in the Bahamas, we're very, very fortunate, as I mentioned before, to have so many young artists, who, you could not have imagined that the art scene would be bursting with so much young talent as exists now. When I came home in 1979, it was, I wouldn't say it was a wasteland, but the artists who were out there, they were on their own,
Right.
So,
and then you have people like my son who not even here, right? They're all over the world. There's a number of them who are out there.
There are many artists doing extraordinary things.
Right, yeah.
And, LeVar, Monroe, and all the others. And then, of course, here you have the University of Bahamas. You know, you have Keyshawn Monroe and Michael Edwards and Heino Schmidt. And, of course, all the galleries, you know, the Turn Gallery, the Cab Gallery.
Yeah, you have so many of them now.
Hillside, of course, the current and what John is doing is Herculean. And whenever I start naming like that, because I don't have anything prepared, I forget someone. But
no, but I'm sure they appreciate that you're just trying to express
the art community
thing.
is a love project, and we are together.
Yes, well, we really, 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 really thank you for taking the time to be with us and sharing with us this today.
It was my pleasure. My pleasure. Like I say, I can't say no to you, man. You know, you're the grandson of my godmother. You know.
Yes.
You know, you and Daniel and Dylan. You know, y'all are precious to me, man. You know.
We appreciate that, and we hopefully we reciprocate.
Yeah.
I so hope we reciprocate in kind to your liking.
Oh, absolutely.
So forth. So.
You all know I love you all, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. One love, one family. You know, and
absolutely.
And Darren, no, I call him One Love. You know. So,
yeah.
So that's how we get to that. Well, we get another comment before we go. Let's see what this comment. Oh yes, Mrs. Cooper saying thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Wow.
Yes, cool. All right. So, till next time, we want you to be safe, have fun, and there are a number of art. Come join us on a Sunday or whatever it is I call them, where you could just join a class and so forth. And because to me, the creative industry is gonna propel our society forward again. We used to be vibrant. Art is vibrant, but we need some of the other spaces in the creative industry to become vibrant again, and so forth. So what I want you to do, understand, is give that lovely lady of yours a huge hug for giving us at least 20-something minutes more of your time.
It's my pleasure.
Away from her, right? But
it's my pleasure.
Yes.
And you give
come for some of them cakes soon. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Anytime, man. Anytime.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. We are one family. Yeah.
Yeah. One love, one family. Yes.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you kindly. Yes.
Okay. Thank you too, Happy.
You're welcome. So you've been watching Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles, and this evening you've heard it all. If you like the show, got some value out of it, do share it. Hit the like button. Let all your friends know, because all of these shows stay up and they could watch it at their leisure whenever they want to, and there's a wealth of information and knowledge that they can gain from it, from the students straight up to the oldest person on the moon. And we love the fact that you interact with us, whether you're in New York, whether you're in Dubai, whether you're in Canada, even Ghana. We just love it. So continue the stretch where Something to Think About is heard about, and all of the guests and their knowledge is imparted for our benefit. So we'll see you next week, same time, for another productive show. Peace out.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative, 242.
Mm-hmm.